Welcome back to Everyday Prepping. It's me, Martin. So I got some requests from listeners overseas or watchers, subscribers, wanting to see, wanting an English version of our series, which we made in podcast format called To Start Prepping. In that series, we talked a lot about the basics for survival, like hope and air, oxygen, water, and stuff like that. And just having a dialogue about what do we actually need if we are in the means of starting our journey into preparedness. And I think a lot of you guys may have seen the text for the podcast episodes and translated them into English and was starting to listening, and you probably didn't understand a thing because we were talking Swedish. So yes, and we really listen to all the feedback and comments we get. So thank you for emailing, thank you for commenting, and thank you for sharing this with us on other social media. So this is the first episode in how to begin prepping, or how to start your preparedness journey. I was thinking like, well, why would anyone be interested in a series of starting preparing or start prepping now, when all the shit has hit the fans all over the place? And then I remember that we always say that it's never too late to start preparing. And an American said that the best time to prep was 10 years ago, but the next best time to start prepping is now. So let's do it. So before, the thing I did when I started my journey was actually to go online, and I ended up going through all these checklists with equipment and gear that I needed for things I didn't even think about. So I started buying things from another person's checklist. There was, the bug out bag list, and there's the go home bag list, and there's a list for your EDC and so on. So I just want to, if you are in the very beginning of your journey, stop. And I don't mean that you're not going to start preparing or start buying things. I just want you to use the phrase stop. So there are, the S stands for stop, pause. The T stands for think. The O stands for observe, and P is for planning. So before you go out with these checklists and you go on a shopping spree, just take a step back, wait, maybe an entire week, because you need time to think and observe. And in these steps of the process, to think, I would translate that into thinking about what are the real things that could happen to you. So that would be, for us in Sweden, there was a lot of panic prepping when Russia invaded Ukraine, and people started buying. They started talking about leaving the country if the Russians came. They were stocking up on iodine tablets for the coming atomic war and stuff like that. So I just want that people pause a bit, stay calm and think, is this really going to happen? Well, for war, from what we've seen, everything is possible. But right now, for my sake, Russia's having some problems, even doing what they wanted to. So I think expanding that scenario into other countries like Sweden would be not, I wouldn't think that would happen. I don't believe that. But if you are in an area where you have forests nearby, a forest fire it's more likely that that would happen. So in the think phase, I would suggest you think about the crises that could happen to you. And there are some crises that are like the same for all people. If you have a work, you can be out of work. If you're healthy, you can get sick. So everything can happen. But if I were to start prepping now with all the things I know, I would start small, and I would do a plan, which is the P, to plan my, things I need. But the T, stop in the stop, think about the crisis that might happen to you, and be realistic. Observing is the next step of the think process, where you observe and maybe you do some research online, or well, it doesn't need to be online, but you can talk to your friends, watch the news, do some research on internet to see if the scenarios you thought about when thinking, is there any facts to support that it might happen? So in Sweden we do have earthquakes, but they're very small. So if I were worried about earthquakes where I live, I would need to do some research and checking the tectonic plates, or whatever they're called, and see if it's feasible that we would actually have a big earthquake here. And we'll probably find out, no, not so much. So that's the observe part. And then we get to the planning part. And if you are working with that you have a feeling that you need to stock up on food and things, the observe and planning part also goes together when it comes to food and water, because in the observe phase, you would actually be doing an inventory of your cabinets, just to see how much food do I actually have. You'll probably find out that you have more food than you thought. So observe and do an inventory. And then planning when it comes to buying stuff, that's where you do your shopping list for preparedness. Sorry I just need to have I have some notes in my computer, so I need to double check them when I talk. So the next phase of the planning, where you have thought about and you observed the potential crisis that might be affecting you. Then, not to make this too much a theoretical thing, but if you really want to do your homework, you can also apply that scenario to the main foundation of survival. So these are hope, oxygen or air, warmth or protection, and then water, food, and medicine. And if you're on a tight budget, this actually makes a lot of sense, because so one of the scenarios I have is being unemployed. So being unemployed, would this affect my hope? Yes, it would very much affect my hope. Will it affect my ability to breathe and consume oxygen? No. Probably not at all. Would it affect warmth or protection if I live in an apartment? it might affect it. If you're in such a dire situation that you don't have the means of paying your heating bill, it might affect that. When it comes to water, in this scenario, it would not affect. Again, if you have the possibility to pay the rent, you will probably also get water. And then the food could be affected, since if you don't have a salary or you don't make any money, you probably will have a tougher time buying food. And the same goes for medicine. So this is a way of eliminating things we don't need for our scenarios, and also focusing on the things that will really be affected. So when it comes to being unemployed or losing your job, hope is the main part, and it's also about economics, your economy. So this would, well, for me, when I think about being risking of being unemployed, I would be starting to build a buffer of money, an economic buffer. And then also, if I have food prepared already, I can use that to be able to live a normal life, even if I don't get any money from my employer. So this is just a means of getting the right mindset and not starting to buy things that you really don't need. I also talked about forest fires, and here I need to cheat. So this, when talking about hope in a forest fire, this would be affected quite dearly as well, because but it wouldn't be, we wouldn't be talking about building an economic buffer. We would rather be talking about your personal ID stuff, so your personal effects, things you have in your apartment or house that carries a lot of weight for your happy memories. So these things that you might lose, but you don't want to lose them. So photos, letters, maybe you need to be aware of how much that affects your hope for the future. When it comes to oxygen and air, it's quite affected, because with a forest fire also comes ash in the air, and you get the smoke. So maybe here we would be thinking about, if I live close to a forest, I might want to have some means of protecting my airways. And also when it comes to protection, forest fires, it could be good to have some sort of protection for fires in the apartment. It wouldn't help you from the forest fires, but if there was some spark or fire that you could do something about in your home, then having good firefighting equipment would be nice as well. And that's not about preparedness, because you should have that. Because that's the most common crisis, is that fire in your home. Water is also not affected, but can be good if you need to fight smaller fires stray fires that caught up in your yard or something like that. When it comes to food, it's not really that applicable to forest fires. Maybe you want something in your bag, your grab bag, the bag you grab with all your personal belongings and important stuff. You might also want to have some food there if you need to leave your home. And then medicine, of course, as well. I mean, if you take daily medication for some disease or something that you have, you would probably want to have a buffer of medicine as well, to be good to go. So this was really theoretical, talking about just taking just stopping for a moment and thinking, observing and planning. I believe that that's the first step you should take. That's something I really wish someone told me when I started prepping, because I didn't do this and I have a lot of stuff that I don't need right now. So this was a very short intro. If you're watching from abroad, please comment if you think this is good enough to just have me sitting here and talking. And also, please be aware that these are my thoughts. You don't have to apply to this. You don't have to agree with what I say. But this is just what I believe myself and what we have been talking about in our Swedish podcast. So I'm not an expert in preparing. I'm just a kind of a normal guy who wants to be prepared. So I hope you found these minutes valuable. If you have any suggestions for improvement, like having a green screen without flickering light, I will fix that. But for now, take care and prep on. See you later. Bye-bye.